Hey everyone, I'm Nicole Guillaume with Guiding Echoes, the channel that is devoted to your spiritual and personal growth. And in today's video, we are discussing the 7 keys to a happy, healthy relationship. Now, over the past few years, I have been doing a lot of research and reading a lot of different books on relationships because human behavior and people in relationships are fascinating to me. But I also wanted to learn why some of my relationships, whether they were with romantic partners or friendships, why some of them didn't work out and why some of them did. And so these are the 7 keys that I have found that seem to answer that question. Now, first on the list is to visualize what a healthy, happy relationship looks like to you. And the reason this is important is because this is really up for interpretation. Everyone has different values that they cherish and that they want to see in a relationship. So for example, it may not be congruent for you to be in a relationship with someone who's highly conservative if you're highly liberal. If you're both passionate about politics and you have these conflicting views, that's probably not going to create a harmonious, loving, accepting environment within your home. So you really need to think about what your core values are and how someone can be a match for that. Now, 2 and 3 on the list are actually quite similar. Number 2 on the list is, are you serving your partner? And number 3 is your partner serving you? And when I talk about serving, I really mean, are you getting your needs met? So, for example, a couple of months ago, I was seeing someone who I really liked, and I know that he liked me a lot. And we came to a point in our very short-lived relationship where our needs were not being met. So my need was that I wanted to see him more. I wanted to see him at least once a week, but he was so busy with his work and with other life responsibilities, he wasn't always able to open that time up for me. And that was discouraging for me because I really value spending quality time with someone. And quality time for me isn't texting on the phone, it isn't sending emails back and forth. And while you can build relationships that way to a certain extent, real magic in relationships happen when you're face to face, when you're hanging out, when you're having a good time, or even when you're maybe having a bad time. But it's that connection that you build with someone in person that really starts to build the chemistry and the dynamic of a relationship. And so from his point of view, he actually needed more space. He had a lot of different things happening in his life. He needed more time. He was trying to figure things out. And so we both met at a time where we were just at different stages. I wanted someone I could hang out with, and he needed someone that could be there for him, but also give him a whole lot more space than what I was willing to give. So that was a situation where our needs were not being met. He wasn't able to meet my need, I wasn't able to meet him, and so eventually we split up. Meeting each other's needs is really important for 2 reasons. And one is that it creates a foundation of safety. If I'm meeting your needs and you're meeting my needs, it means that I feel safe with you. You're going to feel safe with me. And we're going to be able to have these open, intimate conversations where we can be vulnerable and honest and know what we need from one another. The second reason it's important is because if we're not meeting each other's needs, well, needs are needs. That's not the same as a want. A need is something that is required in order for you to survive and thrive. And if you're not getting that from your partner and he or she's not getting that from you, it means that you're probably going to start looking elsewhere to get that need met. Now, there's a lot of different needs that come up in different relationships. The need for validation, the need for affection, the need for time. So knowing which of your needs are most important is going to help you to either figure out what you're looking for in a partner if you're single and you're looking to be in a relationship, or it'll help you to identify what type of conversation you need to have with your partner so that the 2 of you can do a better job of fulfilling each other and meeting each other's needs. 4th on the list is to keep things in their proper perspective. And this can be very challenging. See, what happens in this scenario is that someone starts to get agitated or irritated over something, and they start to form this narrative. They don't stop to wonder if this narrative they've created is true, they just assume it is. So, for example, I have a friend who was gracious enough to allow me to store some of my items in her shed while I was moving out of state and moving around and really had no place to put some of my items. And she told me, you can keep your stuff here as long as you need to. It is absolutely no problem. So I was very appreciative of that. And again, it was very gracious of her. However, since I have come back to California and I've lived here for about a year, over the last 6 months, she has asked me to go get my things back. And every time we set up a plan so I could go over there, something would happen. I'd get a flat tire, I'd end up getting sick. There was just always something that happened beyond my control that prevented me from going. In addition to this, she's a very busy woman, and so it's hard for us to meet each other's schedules. Like, there's always some type of scheduling conflict because she's out and about a lot. She has a very thriving social life and she has a very demanding career. And meeting up with her and finding a date and time that's going to work with both of us has turned out to be quite a challenge. And unfortunately, all of the dates that we've had, like it's been about 5 times when I was supposed to go over there. Like I said, something happened, something beyond my control. And she started to get to the point where she became furious with me. And she felt that I was making excuses so that I didn't have to see her. So she started to form this narrative in her mind where I was inconsiderate, I didn't want to see her, I was using her, you know, the list went on and on. And I had a feeling that she was irritated with me because, truth be told, if I was in her situation, I would probably be a little irritated too. I'd be like, look, Nicole, I get that you're going through stuff, but we really have to figure out how to get your things out of here. Well, you know, we both had different things going on in our life, and, you know, getting my stuff was not in the forefront of my mind because I have other things happening in my life. But getting my stuff out of her shed was in the forefront of her mind, but she wasn't communicating that. Like, I didn't realize that this was that important to her. I had no idea because that wasn't something that was communicated. So she ended up sending me this really horrible message where she was basically calling me a liar and saying I was making excuses. And when I read her message to me, I was really hurt because I thought, you know, I understand why you would think that, but if I'm having health issues or I have a flat tire, those are all things that are beyond my capabilities. You know, and if our schedules are conflicting, that's not entirely my fault either. So I wrote back to her, and, you know, I was as compassionate as I could be, and I explained to her, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I do have medical issues sometimes, and they have been popping up a lot. And I'm sorry I couldn't get out there. I really did want to get out there. I miss you. I would love to see you, but it is what it is. And she was still very upset with me because she created this narrative. She had been creating this narrative for a few weeks where I was inconsiderate, I didn't want to see her, you know, so even though I had apologized and explained to her, like, I really do have these health issues, that's not what she was willing to hear. And she was still playing that story over and over again. And this happens a lot in relationships, and it's happened with a handful of my friendships where people had these expectations of me that they didn't voice, and because they didn't voice them, I couldn't fulfill them, and they just came up with this story about who I am and how I took advantage of them, or whatever the case may be. So when you are in a situation where you're feeling upset, you need to make sure that you open up the lines of communication and ask your friend or your partner or your coworker, what is going on here? You know, say, look, these are the facts as I see them. This is how it makes me feel. And I really need you to fill in the gaps for me. Now, I'm willing to bet that your inner circle is not full of liars. And if it is, you need to do some soul searching to figure out why that is. But I'm sure most of the people in your inner circle are trustworthy and honest. So when you approach this situation with your friend, your coworker, or whoever, do so with an open mind. Know that they're going to provide you with the truth. And don't go into this with the need to be right. See, that's a problem that a lot of people fall into, is they will confront someone because they need to be right. And what they really want is for their friend or coworker to admit that they were wrong. You know, they want their coworker to say, "You're right, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I did this and that." You know, they want some type of validation. And when that happens, that can just make a relationship even worse. So what you want to do is put aside your desire to be right and instead come forward with the desire to build a close relationship. Fifth on the list is to become familiar with the 5 love languages. Now, the 5 love languages is a wonderful book that was written by Gary Chapman, and in that book, he talks about the 5 different ways that people express their love to each other. Now, those 5 different ways are words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of servitude, and gifts. So let's say that your main love language is gifts. When somebody buys you a gift, you just light up like a Christmas tree, right? You love getting gifts. And they don't necessarily have to be expensive. They can be little things. Like if your 5-year-old were to run in and give you a handful of hand-picked daisies from the backyard or dandelions, that would mean the world to you because it is a special little gift. It is how your 5-year-old is expressing love and admiration for you. And it could even be when your coworkers take you out and they buy you your lunch, or someone buys you a candy bar because they know it's your favorite candy bar. And you know, all of those little gifts that people give to you to show that they like you. Now, if that is your main love language, that's most likely the love language you're going to use for other people because it means so much to you, so inwardly you think, well, it must mean a lot to other people too. But the reality is, although everyone likes gifts, not everyone puts the same emphasis on it. So you may go to your favorite coworker and give her her favorite candy bar, and she'll just say, "Oh, thanks, that was nice of you." It didn't do anything to strengthen the bond. And this happens when that's not that person's primary language. Maybe your coworker's primary language is words of affirmation. So to form a stronger bond with her, instead of giving her a candy bar, you would go up to her and say, "Wow, your hair looks great. Did you do something different?" Or, "Wow, that blouse looks great on you. That's a wonderful color for you." Those are the type of ways that you start to build a bond with someone. So for a healthy, happy relationship, you need to figure out what people's love languages are so you can start speaking to them in their love language. Now, 6th on the list is quite possibly the most important out of all 7, and it is this. In your relationships, there needs to be a 5-to-1 ratio. And what that means is that for every 1 negative experience, there has to be 5 positive experiences to cancel the negative experience out. And I know that seems like a lot, because here's the problem. Our brains are wired to respond to negativity. We are always on the alert for it because any type of negativity sends out this danger signal, right? If someone is treating us badly, if we are getting into a lot of fights with the people that we love, there is a danger signal that starts to go off on our brains. And we realize that we no longer feel safe around that person. We're completely stressed out. And if you are an intensely sensitive person, then when you have a bad experience with someone, it'll stay with you for days. And what the research has found is that you cannot have just 1 positive experience to cancel out a negative one. It takes 5 positive experiences to cancel out 1 negative one. And in your relationships, you want to be mindful that you are creating as many positive experiences as you can, because negative scenarios are going to come up, but they should come up once in a while. They shouldn't define the whole of the relationship. So you need to figure out, you and your partner need to figure out what constitutes a positive experience. And it can't be something neutral. You know, it's not like you're cooking dinner and after you and your spouse have sat down to eat, your spouse looks at you and says thank you, and you say you're welcome, that's a neutral experience. That does not bring a lot of joy for anybody. In fact, he might be the one who's stoked about the dinner because maybe his love language is acts of service, right? So he's had this great experience where you've just cooked him this lovely meal, but maybe you've had a bad experience because you were working all day, you were exhausted, you weren't feeling good, and then on top of all of that, you had to make dinner. So you were the one who ended up having a negative experience, but he had a positive one because his love language was met. And now there's a conflict, right? So you created a positive experience for him, and in some level he kind of created a negative one for you. So in order for that to be canceled out, the two of you need to do something that brings a positive energy to the relationship. And maybe it's going out to the movie. Maybe it's that he gives you a nice foot massage. Maybe it's that you guys sit down on the couch and have your favorite ice cream. But now it's time to really engage your positive senses so that you don't go to bed angry, so that you don't go to bed feeling resentful towards your partner because you had to create dinner, you had to make dinner after a really long day. So staying cognitive of how you can create positive experiences for one another is always going to be a good idea. And this is very important in friendships too. When I look back at the different relationships that I've had, specifically the ones that have failed, it was the ones in which there were far more negative experiences than positive ones. And the sad thing is that the person on the other end of the relationship was unaware of how much negativity they were creating, which brings us to number 7, and it is be mindful of the experience that you are creating for the people in your life. The problem with so many of us is that we can be inherently selfish. We think about what we want out of a relationship. We think about what our needs are. We think about our sickness, how we're tired, and we neglect to think about how our behaviors and actions and inactions are affecting the people around us. So, when you are in a relationship, you want to ask yourself, how is my behavior affecting this person? And if you're really good in relationships, then chances are you are always making people feel good, right? You will find that if you're good at relationships, people often feel great around you. And when you break up with someone, they often can't figure out why. You know, they feel like they're left in the dark because they don't understand how much negativity they contributed to the relationship, to the friendship. And in the meantime, you're the one taking the brunt of all of this force, of all this negativity, and they can't see that because they have not asked themselves what type of experience they have been creating for you. They've been taking you for granted, and they've just been enjoying the experience that you created for them. So if you find that you're in a situation where a lot of people are leaving you, where people break up with you, where people ghost you, then you need to ask yourself, what type of experience have you been creating for the people around you? And this can be really hard to do. It can almost be hurtful. It can bring up pain because now we're having to ask ourselves, why were we rejected? Why did that person leave? And if you're really able to do this exercise, and it's difficult, I know, but when you're willing to do it and you're able to be honest in it, there are going to be things about your personality and the way you are treating people that come up that are going to be insightful but hurtful, and you're going to be like, I really shouldn't have done that. Like, that's probably what I did to hurt the relationship. But the plus side to that is, once you figure out what it is you've been doing, you can change it. You can stop the pattern. Sometimes awareness of a situation is enough to stop it. So be brave. Again, if you notice that people seem to be rejecting you, if they're ghosting you, if they're leaving you, if they're breaking up with you, if you notice that most people initiate breakups with you, then you initiate breakups with them, something's possibly off. And you need to ask yourself what that is. And I know that's hard, but it's also very empowering. Now, after watching this video, you're going to have one of two responses. And one response is going to be, oh, that was really interesting. I feel like I do a lot of these already. You know, my relationships with people are moderately good, but now I have an idea of how I can make them better. So if after watching this video, your attitude was mostly positive and you know, you felt like you got something out of this, then that's wonderful. That tells me that you, for the most part, have healthy, happy relationships because you know how to cultivate them and how to maintain them and how to nourish them. Now, on the flip side, some of you are going to watch this and think to yourself, that's a lot of work. I don't even know how I can maintain half of that list. That tells me that something is broken in your relationships with other people. Because people who are good at relationships will go through this list and say, well, that's easy. I already do most of that. Like, that's not a problem for me. But if you went through this and you just thought, that's a lot of work, or I could never do that, or that's too much, your relationships are in danger. And you need to pay attention to that. And so if you went through this list and it did seem difficult and you did even start to get upset, in fact, if you got pissed or you felt anxiety or you felt sadness, if a negative emotion came up when you watch this video, that's good because it means it hit on something and you have some answers and you have an idea on how you can fix things or how you can change them and how you can make your relationships better, right? That's what this video is about. It's about making your relationships better. So the two things that I would tell you to start with is the love languages. You know, really figuring out love languages, and start with maybe 2 or 3 people that are closest to you. Figure out what their love languages are. And then the second most important is that 5-to-1 ratio. You can use people's love language to create a good experience for them. Now, of course, you don't want to go overboard. You know, if you figure out that someone's favorite love language is physical touch, you don't want to be, you know, hands-on with them all the time. Even if they love physical touch, that could just get annoying and a little creepy. Figure out how you can start creating positive experiences for people. And maybe something as simple as maybe you don't make your kids lunch very often or you don't cook dinner a lot. Do that twice a week. Do it once a week. Start paying more, start complimenting people more. Start calling your friends out of the blue just to see how they're doing. Shoot them a quick email. Show that you have some interest in your relationships, and the people that you reach out to will start showing more interest in you. But you have to make sure you do this in a way that is positive in order for it to be effective, okay? So if there is something that I missed in this video, if there's a relationship tip that you would like to add to this conversation, you can put it in the comment description down below. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I would like to welcome you to the Guiding Echoes community, and I'd also like to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here on this channel, we love to discuss a variety of topics, mostly within the self-help and spiritual genre. So if that's something that you're interested in, you've come to the right place. So be sure that you hit that subscribe button, and also be sure that you hit that little bell button too, so you can be notified when I release new videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.